The more time you spend around health sciences, the more you realize that gross recommendations are based off of general populations that more frequently than not, you probably don't fit into if you're watching this video. Let's go ahead and look at the glycemic index, which is a scale that measures how specific foods' carbohydrate content influences your blood sugar levels. Now, why do we even care about influencing blood sugar levels? Changing your blood sugar levels can impact hormonal responses to certain things. For example, by spiking your blood sugar level, you will trigger the release of insulin, which will allow for a GLUT4 protein to migrate to the cell membrane, which helps you end up storing in more of that carbohydrate into the cell. Why is this important? Well, spiking insulin around the time of your training in conjunction with taking in a good protein source can really improve muscle gain. Furthermore, if you're an athlete and you're really trying to preserve your stored up muscle glycogen, you might want to consider spiking blood sugar levels to have a glycogen sparing effect. And so instead of your body breaking down the glycogen stored in your muscle, which can take upwards of like 48 hours to repair, it'll instead pull the glucose from your blood instead and less from the actual glycogen. As a third example, knowing your blood sugar level can be very essential if you participate in activities like fasting. So you can know when you're getting to these dips in blood sugar when you've been extended periods away from carbohydrate sources. Okay, so all of this is great, but where does this glycemic index scale come into effect? And basically, if you are trying to take in a carbohydrate source in order to prevent breakdown of glycogen, you want to make sure that you're picking the most effective source of carbohydrate for you. A lot of this comes down to gastric motility and how you can handle consuming carbohydrate sources during training, but it also really depends on your individual response of your blood sugar to the food itself. If my goal is to optimally spike my blood sugar during exercise and honey has a glycemic index of 50 and maple syrup has a glycemic index of 60, I would think that having maple syrup is going to more effectively get that carbohydrate source into my blood faster than the honey would. The issue with using these numbers that you might just randomly pull off of the internet for glycemic index is that they're not based off of you. The question is then, where do these numbers for the glycemic index even come from? And so for this example, I want us to look at 6 different individuals, each which will give a different resting blood glucose level. Now, if we fed each of these 6 individuals 50 grams of the carbohydrate in sweet potatoes, they would all have significantly different reactions to it, regardless of the fact that they are consuming the same quantity of food. Because of individual variances, all of them would likely have separate reactions. So these 2 individuals might have very different reactions than these 2 individuals. Unless you test yourself, glycemic index is just a composite result of multiple general population individuals, of which you may or may not be similar to. And so the best way to figure out what your individual reaction is yourself is to begin taking blood glucose monitor readings. What I'm showing you in the background here is the device that I use to check my own blood glucose. I try and get a resting blood glucose mark almost every morning, just so that I have a good baseline to gauge it off of. And then I'll try testing myself after different types of meals. Did I have oatmeal from breakfast? How did that affect my blood glucose? Did I have just eggs with olive oil? How did that affect my blood glucose? By assessing eating and then reassessing my blood glucose after different foods or meals, I'm able to better determine what their effect on my body is. Once I know what their effect is, I can more accurately plan those meals around my training throughout the day. Personally, for me, there are 2 main times when I really want to know my blood glucose levels. Firstly, it's when I'm waking up fasted in the morning, intermittent fasting, or doing extended periods of fasting. I want to make sure that my blood glucose level is getting down to a low enough state where I'm not going about processes like mTOR activation for muscle protein synthesis. The second time I really want to pay attention to my blood glucose levels is when I am peri-workout. So I really want to make sure that if I'm doing high intensity cardio work or training where carbohydrate is going to be the predominant source of energy substrate, I want to make sure that I am jacking up my blood glucose around that time in order to have a glycogen sparing effect. I will make two recommendations then to you as the individual. If you currently do not pay attention to the glycemic load or index of any of your foods or meals around your training times, I strongly recommend you to just look at the general online resources out there. While this video was mainly pointed at identifying the flaws in these general parameters given, they really are a great leaping off point for you if you are interested in this topic. However, if you already pay attention to the glycemic index of your foods and try to match that around your meal times and your training times for whatever specific results you're looking for, I strongly recommend give it a shot. Start testing your blood glucose levels empirically, because then you'll be able to get your own individual metrics. It's not something that you'll have to sustain forever. Once I have a good idea of how I respond to certain meals or foods, I don't religiously need to be checking my levels after every time. I can just assume how I'm going to respond to it based off of the prior data I've collected. I really hope that this video might inspire you to look a little more closely at your meal timings and content as it relates to your blood glucose levels. Thank you as always for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.